paper comes as a reaction from Bethany Krall's Gift of the Artist. Aquila Scott, April 8, 2014 writes, the learning process was very different at the Birchfield Penny Arts Center from any other museum I had ever visited in the past. First, the class was divided into groups, and each group took turns standing in front of the art piece Gift of the Artist by Bethany Krall. We were asked to closely examine the piece and tell Ms. Shiraki what we felt about the exhibit. At first it was hard to think of anything because Ms. Shiraki and Ms. Mattil gave the class absolutely no background information as to what the artwork was supposed to signify. With no background information about the artwork, we were forced to use our imagination. It was not easy. Nevertheless, Ms. Shiraki had us stand in front of the piece for several minutes. As we stood examining the piece, each of us gradually came up with our own perceptions on what the piece of artwork represented. Next, each of us was asked to explain what we saw. Ideas were being thrown around, and these ideas helped everyone build and expand off their own original idea. I realized as my group did this without any prior explanation of what the piece represented, gave each member in the group a clean slate to write a creative personal story around Gift of the Artist. These stories were a combination of our own views and those shared with each other on what we understood. Exploring artwork this way helped trigger the audience's creative side. The next paper is written as a reaction of comments that Dr. Anthony Bannon made to me in an interview I had with him in 2013. Written by Kelsey Conway, May 6, 2014. Dr. Anthony Bannon, Executive Director of the Birchfield Penny Arts Center, stated, art is not only in the object or the process that the artist uses, but a concept event that includes the audience. As the audience shares their opinions, melding their self-created realities together, an expansion of their cognition results. What does this mean? Dr. Bannon understands that to develop a good society, young people need an education with an imagination to foster creativity. Using contemporary art, like the artwork at the Birchfield Penny, that is always changing to stimulate visual literacy fosters creative thinking. Steve Jobs, a creative thinker, said it well. Creativity is connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them. That's because they were able to connect experiences they've had and synthesize new ones. The next is from William D. Andrade, from his writing on April 8, 2014. Art museums as a source for informal learning is not a new concept. According to Professor Mattill's literature review, aesthetic education is an important plank in building the new pedagogical model to inspire a diverse audience to want to learn more, develop a passion for experiential learning, and cultivate skills necessary to compete in the rapidly changing information age of the 21st century. Birchfield Penny Arts Center provides experience-based art exhibits that encourage visitors to engage and assimilate aesthetic experience, fostering cognitive development for the young and the old. The next one is a student's reaction to a piece at the Birchfield Penny Milk by a professor at Buffalo State, Brian Milburn. Written by Jessica Lepore, April 8, 2014. Exhibits at the Birchfield Penny Arts Center are educational. For example, one exhibit by Brian Milburn named MELT was done in an effort to expose the effects of global warming on planet Earth. Milburn used very simple colors and turned the general concept of global warming into artwork. In a single piece of art, he took different sizes and shapes of ice cubes and covered them with watercolor paint. He then placed the ice cubes into a glass container that was big enough to hold the liquid water once the ice melted. He then left the water in the container until it evaporated and dripped onto an underlined paper, creating different shapes, sizes, and colors. This process of ice melting simulates the real-life process of global warming. Unique Exhibits like Milk by Milbrand demonstrate how visual exhibits can help students relate and educate to this complex global problem. It is important to recognize Birchfield Penny Art Center as a teacher. The next one is by Nzinga Meadows, also written on April 8, 2014. Using art to foster lifelong learning is not new. John Dewey, father of progressive education, wrote in the early 1930s that the appreciation of art and the learning skill of carefully looking at art can change people's lives. This aesthetic experience can open up different doors for people, giving them opportunities for learning and acquiring different types of knowledge. The Birchfield Penny Art Center is one of those museums that emphasize learning and communicating through art. Many professionals believe that museums like the Birchfield Penny allow people to draw on their creativity with lifelong professional benefits. This idea is supported by Professor Richmond, who explains in his article, Art's Educational Value, from the Journal of Aesthetic Education, how the concept of art is the same concept used within many different careers. One example, the skill of drawing, can be found in drapery design, studying human figures, and fashion. The last paper is a reaction from Celine Kaczynski from her interview with Kathy Shiraki. Celine Kaczynski writes on February 20th, 2014, Kathy Shiraki believes that art is a form of expression and another form of thinking outside the box. She focuses on the issue of what inspires people to become involved with art and what made her become so inspired and involved with art. Her basic argument is that the Birchfield Penny is not just an ordinary art museum or center, but it is also a place of learning and gathering new ideas and thoughts. She deeply believes that art is a door that opens up a pathway for different opportunities that people never even knew existed. Learning to express yourself and stand up for what you believe in is another form of art that the Birchfield Penny really enforces. Kathy stresses this point in the interview. She notes that education is not only seen within classrooms, but it is also seen within different places that not only deal with words on a piece of paper. The point she is making here is that if students really use their minds and think outside of their comfort zone, then they would see the full picture that the Birchfield Penny is really trying to promote. She wants to show children that when they come to the center to view art, it is not only entertainment, but also another form of learning that involves critical thinking on a deeper level. Ultimately, Shiraki argues that education is in many forms and can be taught in many different ways. There are different ways of thinking that also revolves around the things that we observe in life. She wants to show that basically life is one big giant piece of art. It is actually a masterpiece made to benefit everyone. She does not want students to take art or anything in life for granted.